The offseason is officially behind us. For the first time this season, it is game week. And I am Johnny Sports Network, here to provide you with my week 0 college football predictions. For those of you who tune in regularly or only tune in during the football season, welcome back. It is great to see you again, and I am looking forward to enjoying another college football season together. And I would say for week 0, we have got a pretty good slate of games. Idaho State and UNLV. This game was originally scheduled for September. If I recall correctly, it was originally scheduled to be in week 3, but it was moved up to week 0 during the offseason. Fresno State and Kansas. Sam Houston State and Western Kentucky. Stanford and Hawaii. Hawaii, a regular in week 0. And the game of the week in Dublin, Ireland. Iowa State and Kansas State. Farmageddon, a top 25 matchup. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the first top 25 matchup that we've had in week 0. Because week 0, ever since college football made week 0 a thing, made it a staple in college football, it's been a warm-up for week 1 the next week. And a lot of the teams in week 0, they've been teams that you may or may not see again after week 0, which I've always treated week 0 as an opportunity to invest into the group of 5 teams, the smaller programs, as it's a moment for those group of 5 teams, the smaller schools, an opportunity to introduce themselves to the college football fandom. Without further ado, let's get to the week 0 college football predictions right here on the Johnny Sports Network. We begin with Idaho State and UNLV. And honestly, this game feels self-explanatory. The major storyline for this game, Dan Mullen is back on the sidelines. It's our first look at UNLV with Dan Mullen at the helm. And it's unknown as of this moment I'm recording this, who will start at quarterback. Will it be Virginia transfer Anthony Calandria or Michigan transfer Alex Orjai? UNLV only has 5 returning starters, but among those 5 returning starters, running back Jaden Thomas, 918 rushing yards last season. And the reason why I feel like this game is self-explanatory, Idaho State is 5-60 all-time against FBS teams. Their last win against an FBS team was Nevada in 2017. They allowed almost 38 points per game last year, 116th in the FCS. They've only had 1 winning season since 2014. They do have 10 returning starters. All 5 of the offensive line starters are back for Idaho State. They lost their top 2 wide receivers last year in Jeff Weimer and Christian Fredrickson. Jordan Cook will be starting at quarterback for Idaho State in this game, but head coach Cody Hawkins has made a statement saying that there is a plan to play quote-unquote everybody. And the reason why I bring that up is because in last year's season opener for Idaho State, they played 4 different quarterbacks. With that being said, despite the unknown who will start at quarterback for UNLV in this matchup, I think UNLV should and will win this pretty easily. Fresno State and Kansas. For Fresno State, first game under new head coach Matt Entz, who won a couple of FCS titles at North Dakota State and was the linebacker coach for USC a season ago. For Kansas, an opportunity to have a good start to the season, looking to bounce back after a disappointing year last year, finishing 5-7. However, toward the end of the season, Kansas, they began to show their true potential. And a major story for Kansas last season was all the one-score losses where they couldn't finish game after game. And they may have went 5-7 last season, but if they're able to finish games, at the very least, they could have finished maybe 9-3. They do have 10 returning starters from a year ago, including quarterback Jalen Daniels, who a lot of people may consider him to be a dark horse in the Heisman race, perhaps. Fresno State announced that they will be starting E.J. Warner at quarterback, a Temple and Rice transfer, also one of the sons of Kurt Warner. E.J. Warner does lead active quarterbacks in career passing yards. Maybe it is a stat that may not mean much to a lot of people, but I do think it could potentially mean something. Even though that this is going to be the first game under Matt Entz, I do think that he does bring something to the table for Fresno State in this game. Coming from North Dakota State, FBS teams, they dread seeing North Dakota State on their schedule. North Dakota State, they're an FCS team that they find a way to keep games close against FBS competition, if not pull off the upset. I do think Kansas wins this game, but I will not be surprised in the slightest if Fresno State keeps this game close. Up next, we have Sam Houston State and Western Kentucky. For Sam Houston State, first game with new head coach Phil Longo, the longtime assistant offensive coordinator. He did coach in Division I before, about 20 years ago with LaSalle, but this is Phil Longo's first FBS head coaching experience. And for Western Kentucky, they have lost quarterback Caden Veldkamp to FAU in the transfer portal. They also lost their top 4 receivers from a year ago. Only 5 returning starters from a year ago. Sam Houston State with 8 returning starters from a year ago. As I did just mention, this is Phil Longo's first FBS head coaching experience. And the big question is, can he build off of the success that Sam Houston State had a year ago, being a 10-win program last year? The starting quarterbacks in this game for Western Kentucky, Maverick McIver, the Abilene Christian transfer, and he followed offensive coordinator Rick Bowie from Abilene Christian. For Sam Houston State, Hunter Watson will be starting the game, but is it a possibility we see Mabry Matuire at some point in this game as he followed Phil Longo from Wisconsin? I haven't looked at many predictions yet for the games this week, but I haven't seen many people give Sam Houston State a chance in this game, which I do get that, as there's a lot of unknowns with Sam Houston State. But a big weakness for Western Kentucky last year was the run defense. They gave up 223.6 rushing yards a game last season, which was 129th in the FBS. And Sam Houston State, I'd say they have a pretty solid running back room. Indiana transfer Elijah Green, North Texas transfer Shane Porter, and Alton McCaskill, who has been at a few different schools, Colorado, Houston, and Arizona State. Western Kentucky did promote Devon Brown and Davis Merritt as co-defensive coordinators. But I do think starting the season, I do think West Kentucky will go back to some of those old habits of giving up a lot of rushing yards. And I do like Sam Houston State's running game. I do think West Kentucky will win the game. However, I do think Sam Houston State's running game is going to keep them in this game from start to finish. And I didn't point out yet, but I do have the point spreads. But I do think Sam Houston State, they do enough in this game to cover the 9.5. Stanford and Hawaii. For Stanford, the offseason for them was unforgettable for the wrong reasons. At the end of March, head coach Troy Taylor was relieved of his duties after getting caught in 4K, allegedly bullying and harassing members of the Stanford athletic department. And with it being the end of March, spring ball was on the horizon. Stanford had to scramble to find a head coach, and they hire Frank Reich. And it's only a 1-year deal for Frank Reich. Stanford essentially this season has nothing to lose but a lot to gain. And also when you consider the fact that Stanford has finished 3-9 in their last 2 seasons. And the first game of the Frank Reich era, a road trip to Hawaii, a week 0 regular, not even a week 0 regular, perhaps the week 0 regular, as I do think Hawaii's played in every single week 0 ever since college football made week 0 a thing. But immediately what sticks out to me in this matchup, the returning starters. Stanford with 14 returning starters, Hawaii with 15 returning starters. Particularly on the defense, Stanford 8 returning starters, Hawaii 9 returning starters. And Stanford, they announced that Ben Goldberson, the 6th-year senior Oregon State transfer, will be starting at quarterback for Stanford, and not Elijah Brown, who almost everyone thought would be starting at quarterback, as it felt like a consensus he would be starting at quarterback, but he will not. They surprise us all and go to Ben Goldberson. While Hawaii, Micah Alihado, in his one start last season, the final game of the season, 37 for 57, 469 passing yards, and 5 touchdown passes. Could Micah Alihado be the quarterback that Hawaii has been looking for the longest time? Could this be the year that Hawaii finally breaks through under Timmy Chang? But something that's going against Hawaii, they are 0-6 in Power 4 games under Timmy Chang. I will say, however, if there was a moment for Hawaii to win against a Power 4 team, it would be the Stanford team, because there is a lot of uncertainty about what to expect from Stanford. And the sports books, they agree. They have Hawaii as a 1.5, 2-point favorite, depending on where you're looking. Even though I just read off that Hawaii 0-6 in Power 4 games under Jimmy Chang, there's just so much uncertainty with Stanford right now that I can't pick them to win. So I'm going to go with Hawaii to finally get a Power 4 win under Timmy Chang. As I think that Hawaii, they may end up just being a sleeper in the Mountain West Conference, because I do think the ceiling for Hawaii is pretty legitimate. And finally, the game of the week, number 22 Iowa State, number 17 Kansas State, Farmageddon in Dublin, Ireland. And what a matchup to begin the college football season. Two teams in the top 25. Two teams that I think are going to be serious contenders in what I think is going to be a very stacked Big 12 conference this season. Returning starters, Iowa State with 13, Kansas State with 10. Iowa State did lose their top two receivers from a year ago in Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. However, they do return Carson Hansen and Abu Sama III in the backfield. For Kansas State, Dylan Edwards is now the RB1. Last season, he had 546 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. He also had a couple of receiving touchdowns last season. How will he do this season leading the Kansas State backfield? In this matchup, we have two quarterbacks that are going to play with a chip on their shoulder this season, looking to show some improvement statistic-wise. For Iowa State, Rocco Becht, 59.4 completion percentage last season. For Kansas State, Avery Johnson, 58.3 completion percentage a season ago. Kansas State head coach Chris Kleiman has stated that Avery Johnson looks and feels more confident than ever. While a moment that stuck out to me last season for Iowa State was Rocco Becht in the post-game press conference of the Big 12 championship game. He stated that they will be back next season. A weak point for Iowa State last season was the run defense. They allowed an average of 189 rushing yards a game, which was 105th in the FBS. While Kansas State, they only gave up 125 rushing yards a game on average, which was 30th in the FBS. Even though Kansas State is listed as a 3.5-point favorite, I think that these teams are fairly close to even though conducting my research, I feel like Kansas State's offensive line is a little more experienced, but it isn't by much, which is why I was stating that this matchup feels pretty even. And a game like this, it could come down to the trenches, but I don't think it's going to. I think this game is going to come down to which quarterback makes the plays in the fourth quarter when it counts. I am going to go with Iowa State, even though there were some instances last season where Avery Johnson made the plays he needed to win games. This Iowa State team, they're playing with a chip on their shoulder, and they have momentum. They are starting the 2025 season looking to follow up on their best season in program history, their first double-digit win season in school history. But if Kansas State does win this game, it's going to be Avery Johnson playing the best that we've seen Avery Johnson play, as Chris Kleiman's statement would be correct on him looking more and feeling more confident than ever before. And it will be also if Iowa State's run defense hasn't shown improvement from a season ago, as in the matchup last year, Iowa State gave up 144 rushing yards in that game, where Iowa State, they still won that game 29-21. But I will point out, Rocco Becht only had 137 passing yards in that game. But they did also have 187 rushing yards in the matchup last season. And I do think Carson Hansen and Abu Sama III will be key difference makers in this matchup for the Cyclones. And I will be taking Iowa State to pull off the upset. And that will do it for my Week 0 college football predictions. And before I conclude everything, I do want to ask, should I do an additional predictions video on Wednesday or Thursday leading up to the games called The Best the Rest? And that's because over the last couple of seasons, I've always concluded the video by asking if there are any games that you'd like me to predict that were not predicted in the video. That way I kind of want to make it easier for everybody. And there are about 11 or 12 games for week 1 that I would like to predict, but I'm just not sure which 7 to choose from. Texas, Ohio State, that'll be one. LSU, Clemson, without a doubt. Notre Dame, Miami, without a doubt. Alabama, Florida State. So I still need 3 more. And the choices are Virginia Tech, South Carolina, TCU, North Carolina, Utah, UCLA, Syracuse and Tennessee, Georgia Tech, Colorado, Auburn and Baylor, Nebraska and Cincinnati, and Boise State and South Florida. That will likely be in the Best the Rest video. Comment your Week 0 predictions down below in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe. Until next time, enjoy the opening weekend of the college football season. Week 0, just the warm-up for Week 1 and all the other weeks in the college football season. And as always, Vegas is always watching.